Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome to another episode of Why We Play the Game, How We Play the Game, part 2 of, or 3, I'll have to double check, I didn't do that, non-magical equipment, and today we're going to focus on tools and actual equipment. There is no reason why our games need to be completely, especially our fantasy role-playing games, need to be completely steeped in earth-based historical timelines of events and cultures and world building. There's no reason why inventions couldn't have been made sooner as opposed to later in our particular evolutionary timeline. There's no reason why the Swiss Army knife couldn't have been invented hundreds of years earlier, or at least the multi-tool or the entrenching tool or things like that. I like to look at any piece of equipment in that era and see what's the limit we could legitimately improve it with that particular world's technological level or theme, or even along the lines of race. For example, if dwarves were real and they made tools, which they do, they would make some innovations, especially since there was no magic, for them, for the most part, depending on the editions or whatever games you're playing. For the most part, they relied on good old-fashioned ingenuity, hard work, and the desire to improve things would probably be pretty prevalent amongst the dwarves and the gnomes as well. Most game worlds that I've come across really allow gnomes to get away with that exact thinking that I just spoke. So having semi-modern tools and equipment in your game has lots of justification, and if you think about it for a little while, there's a lot of different ways you can give a player a piece of new equipment as a, or in lieu of a piece of gold or a diamond or a +1, whatchamacallit. Give them a Swiss Army knife, or give them a tool, in the treasure, in the loot that they just scavenged. Something that's going to help them out, maybe get a faster jump on the draw, or do something faster or better. Good example, I'm going to start with thieves and then go back to fighters and clerics. Thieves tools, I hated the video games where your lock pick would break, just as a mechanic, as a gimmicky way to force you to have a resource, when in reality the resource is time and not getting spotted when you're trying to pick a lock. Most lock picks back then, one, didn't exist, if you really want to go about it, or they were, lifted copies of the actual keys, or just brute force with a hammer and chisel to get said lock open. But giving your thieves quality thieves tools that aren't going to break under normal circumstances, as it is the saving throw for items, a metal lock pick against a crushing blow is still going to have a pretty damn good saving throw. And if your thief doesn't even have an exceptional strength, then why are you doing that to your players? Another thing I like to do is give them a quality set of lock picks or lock picking tools that gives them like a +5 or a +10%, or maybe it's magical and it does that. But you can start out small with a, mind you, it's only going to work for opening locks and finding and removing traps. +5%, that's nothing. What does it cost us, right? But now that player's got something really cool that maybe they'll treasure a little more than their regular, piece of said equipment. And we already talked about the rope and the grappling hook, but those are other tools that if you made them a little better, a little lighter weight, again, lightweight, durable, and cheap. Well, free is pretty cheap. Durable and lightweight, you make those things, those two factors of quality, you give them something or offer them, maybe you can buy it or find it or whatever. You give them something that feels like getting something magical or a big gem or whatever. The same endorphin chemistry going on, dopamine chemistry going on upstairs, the same pleasure level for the player. They're like, cool, I got something really cool, especially in the lower level games. You don't want to give them out a magic item. It's too early for that. Hey, you found this really cool set of lockpicks on this dead body, in front of the door because he got hit with a trap, but he had these quality tools. Cool. Let's move on to the cleric. An item that really often overlooked was the holy water sprinkler, which sometimes was actually a weapon as well. But imagine the cleric finding a holy water sprinkler, which is something they can pour the holy water in and then splash the undead with it without risking an inaccurate throw, or it's just built into the mace so that when they push the button and release the catch and now they swing on the undead, he gets hit with the holy water from the silver mace as well as the damage from the silver mace. You telling me someone would never invent that? That's or maybe like I had a game where the holy symbol was very much akin to a throwing star. Imagine your priest has a pocket full of throwing star holy symbols, so that when it sticks the undead, they get hit full in the wherever with a holy symbol. Maybe even it's blessed, so it does even more damage, but it doesn't have to be necessarily magical, and they can always retrieve them from the ashes or the remains of the undead after the battle. I haven't really thought of anything you could do with prayer beads or incense, but there's no reason why they couldn't come up with incense that does more than the few limited forms that were in the books that I'm aware of. Why not? Or their gear and their armor, etc. is, maybe the cleric finally got some plate mail, but then the order, went and engraved holy symbols all over it, so that if the vampire tries to touch it, not magical, but it's got that holy symbol on it. If it, maybe you could work out stuff like that. Now, as for the fighter, the sky's the limit. There, we talked about weapons, but there's other things. Your good old fashioned. I've got a Russian entrenching tool. It's a hammer. It's an axe. It's a nail puller. It's a wire cutter. A bunch of different things all in one. Instead of having to carry a hammer, a saw, things like that, you could design your own tools that fighters, could use in a pinch as a hammer, or maybe not so much the hammer, but definitely the hand axe, and also have, one less thing to carry, or a bunch of different things, and they wouldn't have to carry. Folding tools, things like that, also can decrease encumbrance. I've got a really fine entrenching tool that's just a shovel, but if you screw it, now it's a hoe, or it's got a saw blade on it, or things like that make carrying a primitive hammer or mallet and an axe and all those things all at the same time in your backpack less room for treasure. The good old fashioned wire saw, maybe it's a dwarven or gnomish wire saw. If you've ever used one, they make starting fires and setting up camp a lot easier. And if it's made of quality, maybe it won't break like the cheap Chinese crap we get. Make your world even better by not having things that break all the time. Then you've got your the same would go for the ranger and the barbarian, the cavalier or the paladin. Some of the things from the cleric can move over for the paladin. Same thing with having his armor engraved and things like that. Maybe you could his trusty handy dandy lance. Also has, maybe there's a long sword hidden inside it, so when it snaps, he can pull out his long sword easier. Things like that. Think of ways you can, make their jobs easier without, resorting to magic all the time, because it seems like a lot of the times we're inclined to go that route. And, sometimes people argue, well, if there's magic, people wouldn't, develop things technologically. But tell that to the gnomes and the dwarves, okay? And maybe they have the market on these really cool gadgets. Heck, even the elves would make things that are, cool, living thousands and thousands of years and wanting to travel light. They would develop other equipment that doesn't need to be infused with magic to make it work. They could get the job done easier, quicker, faster, etc. Then you have the magic user having, there's like the bone and the wooden scroll tube. You could make the scroll tubes, waterproof, different ways. Maybe it's rubber or something, gaskets, so that they, screw them back tight. They're not going to get damaged. Maybe even a little more protected against fire or heat. Maybe you could have the potion bottles that are not glass, so they're not breaking their, if you've ever gotten one of those It's a Boy or It's a Girl cigars, they used to come in these aluminum cigar tubes that have a screw-on cap. Well, if your potion's got a screw-on cap and it's in a flexible metal vial with room to squish a little, so if it got hit, it wouldn't automatically puncture or something like that. I used to have a magic user that literally had a quiver for his wands, because he had like 3, 5, whatever different wands, and had him in a literally like a Wild West quiver, so he could pull them out real quick and not have to worry about it, and could tie them down and things like that. The bandolier of pouches for ingredients and spell components, things like that. There's no reason why your magic user has to walk around looking like Father Time when he could look like a bold adventurer, bandoliers, daggers all over the place, instead of the, looks like Merlin and he's, got one foot in the grave. Have your adventurers look adventurous. Their equipment and their clothing too can also be, made out of stronger, better materials. Maybe it gives you a +1 against fire, because it's made out of something. It's got a little, oil coating, not oil, but, wax or some of the different things they use for waterproofing. We don't think twice about it when they're going into, into the frozen north. Oh, you've got cold weather clothing. Well, what about, something that's a little resistant to fire, or something that's maybe a little resistant to acid, without jumping into magic? Maybe there's some things that you can incorporate, the plant-based fibers or something that's, treated with something or another. I was watching a video this morning on the Chinese parasols, how amazing they are if you get a really good one, and it's made out of paper, but it's water resistant. I don't know about you, but I got all kinds of paper that I wish was water resistant. It's not. But those are some things you can think about. The assassin, oh my God, they should be like the kings of crafty, nifty little gadgets, because part of their job as an assassin is also, which most people overlook, is being a spy. Having hidden telescopes and disguise kits and all kinds of things like that. Not magical, but people would figure out a way to come up with a disguise, a fake nose. I mean, all kinds of different things that these characters could have that, like I said, don't have to be magic. And I know, like, a lot of game masters like to really mud sort it and deny the magic. Well, if you're going to deny the magic, then you have to, in all fairness, increase what can be done technologically. Let's not forget, especially us humans, and more so or less so for the other demi-humans, we are tool makers. We make gadgets, we make and invent things to make up for the fact that we aren't born with claws and fangs and prehensile tails and all that stuff. So give your players a leg up every once in a while with introducing some sort of gadget that makes their day easier, better, their job more efficient, and you'll be amazed how you can get away with less magic items, at least at the beginning, and also make your world a little more unique because you've got cuckoo clocks, or you've got wristwatches, or you've got multi-tools, or whatever. Use your imagination. Throw some cool stuff your players' way. They will thank you later, and if not, send them my way. I'll remind them for you. But until then, that's what I've got for you guys this morning. I will be back tomorrow with, I'm not sure if I'm going to be going over armor or one of the other items on my list. Let me know what kind of gadgets you'd like to hear about, or any gadgets you've found or put in your games to make your player character's life a little more adventurous. I will see you guys in about 40 minutes for the second breakfast. Until then, folks, have a great Monday. Have a great week. Love you guys, and as always, happy trails.